Yeah, and I did not introduce myself. So my name is Addison Hyam. I'm the chief architect here at Stream Native. I've been part of the Pulsar community for a few years. You've probably seen me around in the Slack channel or other places. Happy to be on the call today. And just give a brief overview, this is really a time for any questions about Pulsar. So, but if there's not any questions, or if we don't have enough time for all the questions, we will usually cover a few different topics, just as sort of informational things. So a bit of free form questions, as well as some prepared things we can discuss. And we'll just wait one more minute to see if a few more people. All right.
We have a quiet crew today. I mean, we have Addison here, so.
Well, we will get started. Yeah, Alexander, so you have a troubleshooting situation. Let me just, if it's usually easier to share that over voice, I will, although you're in the channel twice, so I'm not sure which one is, okay, Josh. Let me, can you make me host, Carolyn? So I can
Oh,
let
yes.
people.
I am going to drop, and then I'll do that as I'm leaving. Hold on just a second. Hold on. Sorry.
I can do it if you like, Carolyn.
I think you're blocking me from doing it, actually.
Sorry, 1 second here. Technical difficulties.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So I guess it's we have I'll just allow.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, okay. It shows. So that's my coworker's name who gave me this link. I didn't realize it was tied.
Oh no, no worries, not a problem. So it's Josh. Nice to meet you, Josh.
Yeah.
Go ahead, share your question.
Yeah. So I've been trying to build the. So I asked you this like a week or two back in the Slack channels. I was trying to build a custom authentication token class because I have it for Java, and so I was trying to figure out how to do it for Python. And you had mentioned that it's a C++ wrapper. So I went through the process of creating all the wrappers to build it. And then when I got to the stage of building it and trying to use it, I ran into this error that said when I tried to import the actual library, it gave me a no suitable image found, but did find, and then it references. I don't know how much you've interacted with the C++ on the Pulsar repository.
So this is in the no suitable image found. That's when you import it with C++.
So I have tried to build the C++ package source, and then I tried to install it, and then it gives me the same error. Even I thought it was a mistake that I had made with writing some of my code. So I pulled the 2.7.1 tagged repository, or not repository, I'm sorry, the branch, and I built it from that, and I still see the same error relating to that.
And that's when is that related? Is it trying to pull Docker? Like
I do use the Docker build, and then after that I run the command. From what I've seen from the Pulsar docs, it's sudo python setup tools.py and then install. I've also tried to build a wheel for it, but that didn't work. And so I just decided to follow the instructions that were listed. And when I tried to install it and then try to run it, I see the same error either way when I'm trying to use the wheel or not.
And that's
Uh,
just in the build process, correct?
No, this is when I tried it. The build seems to
Oh.
build fine. As far as I can tell, like the C++ doesn't complain. It does complain about, I think, a test, but like it doesn't stop it from building. And then I build the Python package via the setup tools, and then I install it through the command that it was listed on the Pulsar documents. And then I try to run the test producer. And when I try to run the test producer, that's when it complains about a shared library. The underscore pulsar.so library seems to be the thing it complains about. Can you still hear me?
Oh, I was muted myself. Apologies. That was my side. You're good. You mentioned the SO. So you're building a custom SO, the binary for the Pulsar, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So typically what that is that it's failing to load the and there's might be a few different errors you get that where it might say something like invalid signature or something along those lines. But it just, is that all? I mean, if you have the error message, that'd be great if you wanted to share it in the chat here.
Do you have the error message? I don't know how much this gibberish is going to make sense in the chat, but that is the error message.
Unknown first 2 bytes. Okay. So this is likely something we'll need to, chat a bit more about in the in Slack, but what that would seem to indicate is that the way the SO is getting built is that it's either using the wrong SO or the wrong binary format. So it's not recognizing the bytes of the Python when it's trying to. Apologies, I'm just.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, so that should that's likely something that may be somewhat of a subtle build issue, especially if you're pulling that out of. I assume you're on a Mac and and pulling and then using Docker to build it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the problem is likely that because you're building it with inside the Docker image and it's using Linux, and then you're trying to use the same SO in Mac, there's a different build process you'll need to go through of not doing it via Docker when you want to run it locally. Does that make sense?
So I thought too, I was hoping that the Docker build would save me the issue of dealing with any sort of peculiarities of building it locally on my machine. I thought it would build, the library in a way that it could be utilized by any machine, essentially.
No, yeah. So sadly, the sort of the challenge is that that because we're relying on that. I mean, there is scripts that will take care of building it across multiple versions, part of the build scripts, but yeah, sadly there is sort of the difficulty of you still need to kind of have, and that's why if you look actually at the Python client, there's different versions, there's different wheel files for different OSs.
Yeah. I had noticed that, and I honestly I've never had to build a Python module from scratch, so I've never dealt with this. And so I don't even know. I'm curious, this probably is a simpler question. How does the module, so when I go to import Pulsar, how is that name associated with my local package that I've built? Is it because of the file structure? Is it because of the folder structure, and the folder's named Pulsar for the Python? And so that's just what it's named, because the pip package itself is called Pulsar-client or some additional aspects on top of it.
Essentially, it's basically on your the package name, then gets that on your your resolution path. But yeah, and then, so it's basically just depending on where you are in the Python ecosystem of how that's getting imported. But yeah, that is,
Do you want me to fill out this document with that
oh,
question?
no, that's okay. Someone else was asking for the link to that. So, but yeah, so likely we can sort of, I can point you in the path of some of the other members of the work on Pulsar as well, so that we can help you figure out on the build side about how to do that. But that, I think that's kind of the answer there. Shouldn't be anything too crazy to do, but we can point you at some of the scripts and whatnot. But yeah, we also, it's a good thing to just for more context for anybody else on the call, about providing additional extensibility for the authorization within Python. Something that's very easy in Java. When you sort of involve the C++ clients, like with Node.js and Python, a little bit trickier. So in addition, we can help you get you going there, but then figure out how to make that easy in the future. That hopefully helps you a little bit in the right direction. Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. I was just I'm curious why the approach was taken to write the C++ wrapper rather than, was it just because C++ was already written and so it was easier in general to get a Python build out of that? That would be my question.
Yeah. So that's a good question, and we can talk a little about so Pulsar, as far as a client, is has some logic in it, right? There's certain things about like handling reconnects in the event of disconnections. Certain aspects like the prefetch that happens in Pulsar. So for performance reasons, there's prefetching of things. So the client libraries do have a decent amount of logic in them. It's not purely a simple kind of wrap of the API. And so primarily the C++ and the libraries built on top of that allows for a lot more sharing of code, and particularly in like dynamic languages like Python, Ruby, Node.js, etc. Extending the using like FFI into the C++ is a really great balance of giving you access to a really robust implementation without having to re-implement all that logic from language to language. It just has a higher likelihood of bugs or issues. So that's kind of the overall idea behind that. Though I should also say, I think there are some benefits of pure client implementations, and there's a few of those that not one for Python, but for a few other languages that are in progress. So hopefully that gives some context there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was curious, was there ever, so the main reason why I have to modify everything is mainly to trigger my custom authentication classes in my on the cluster side, because everything seems to rely, at least through the authentication, everything seems to rely on the get auth method name to at least route the authentication to the correct class. Do you think there would ever be a time in the future where it could be like there would be a potential to add a method to change that aspect? And I say that because my authentication is very similar to the authentication token. The main difference is that it's like a implementation of my token. I use like Keycloak. So it just the classes, I just need something to trigger. I just need something to tell my cluster. Use my style of classes rather than the default authentication token stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, or a good thing. Definitely it makes sense for us to think about extendability of the token class, of being able to just basically control the name, because I think that's a common use case of, hey, I basically just have a slightly different, version of the token needs. And so I think that's definitely something that would be a great, and actually if you wanted to sort of, I'd encourage you to just sort of create an issue to say, hey, can we just make it so that I can extend the name of, or provide a custom name for the token class?
Okay.
That's a very reasonable extension to make it simpler. And sort of fits within the need of just being able to do somewhat of a custom token validation, but all other things, it's basically an authorization that is a very common mechanism for still sending data. Providing some additional flexibility there makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it seems like someone tried to do that too in the C++. I noticed someone created an authentication called OAuth2, which I imagine adds some more extensibility other than the token.
Correct.
But ultimately, it's a slightly modified version. It would be great for any of the client libraries to be able to just set that auth name so it triggers correctly based on a token aspect at least. But I'll create an issue. I really appreciate.
Yeah, no problem.
Also, for my own sake, how do I sign up so it doesn't show my name? Because clearly that is not what I was supposed to do.
The link that I think just got posted in the Pulsar Slack a few minutes ago from Alice from our team will allow you to sign up directly. All right. Well, thanks for the question. If you have any more, I'll move on here to Daniel's question. Daniel, I see your answer, the question there. I'll also allow you to talk here if you want to talk through it a little bit. But so your question about, yep, can hear you just fine.
Awesome. So I actually had a related question. I think it's mostly answered in the Slack channel, but I'm not actually the one that's doing the work on this. I'm kind of working on other parts and leading a project. But I'm looking to a very similar thing, extending OAuth to meet our use case, which I think we're going to upstream later, but we're working on doing our own plugin right now, so we have control of our own destiny and our time. But as far as doing any sort of auth plugin, and I'm interested in authentication, not authorization in this case. It looks like we can compile the custom classes in Java into jar files and just place them into the Pulsar root libs, I think it's libs, directory, and then just refer to them in the configuration for proxies and brokers. Is that the extent of it, or is there more I need to know?
No, that should pretty much be the extent of it. And I can kind of, give you an example here of what, give me 1 second and I will.
Okay. Yeah, an example would be great. And then maybe we'll put something or create an issue and then put something in the documentation that kind of finishes out the instructions on that part. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Apologies. I'm pulling the latest Docker image. It'll take me 1 second here and then I can. But yeah, so pretty much, in Java, there's going to be the class path. So the class path is where the class loader in Java is going to look for any named classes. So it's going to basically, read all those jar files that are in there. It's going to kind of pull in all the metadata. And then when you go and try and load a class, it's going to say, okay, do I know about, do I have this class name somewhere on that class path? Okay. So by default, that folder you mentioned there, and we can talk a little bit also. I think there's some documentation here. So, and also once again for context, this is Pulsar tries to make authentication quite extendable, quite pluggable. And one of the ways, we do that is through you being able to create and dynamically load a class. So if you ever want to implement your own authentication, you can do so by extending this authentication provider interface, or actually extending an existing interface like the token auth, and then providing your authentication provider, which will then be loaded from that path. And so once again, that's, at that layer, sort of give an idea there. And apologies, I'm just almost done here with getting the latest Pulsar image, so we can poke at that a little bit more concretely. I'll switch my share here. So this is just, as an example, the typical layout of, whether you're running in Kubernetes, in Docker, or whether you are running, in an on-prem or some sort of, non-containerized environment, you're still typically going to have, this is your Pulsar distribution. And one of those things in there is this lib folder. The lib folder, this has, all of Pulsar's dependencies. And if you place your own dependency in this folder, then that will be in the class path. But one thing I just kind of wanted to give you some additional context on is that Pulsar has a fair number of environment variables. I guess I could actually run the command here that control some of this behavior. And so if for some reason you don't want to put that in the lib folder, you can set this Pulsar extra class path variable. And this then is just an environment variable. If that's set before you run, your broker some component, and this is pointed at some path, it will add that to the class path. That allows you to, have some additional flexibility in where you may place that jar, if that's helpful to you. But once again, it's not really the same. It works either way, whether you place that directly in the lib, so it's directly in the class path, or if you want to have it maybe be a bit more hygienic of like, hey, here's all our custom stuff. That's where you can use that Pulsar extra class path for that. There's likewise, there's some other things that, from like an environment perspective, you can also add like extra options on the JVM and whatnot, if there's ever any things there. So one of those things that these environment variables can be really useful in certain situations.
One suggestion that, and maybe I've just missed it, it would be nice if there was a published place as opposed to digging through code for used environment variables.
Yes, the Pulsar command, and I just did that, but the Pulsar command prints it out as a help there. But there also should be, most of this is in the Pulsar configuration. Actually, I don't know. I thought there was a document for it somewhere, but I might be wrong. It's kind of a there's another file where this is. Sorry, I was just trying to remember where that search, but I'm not finding it right now. But there's another there's another file called Pulsar env that kind of documents things. And I thought that was documented somewhere in the setup process, but yeah, no, that's a great feedback. In addition to the configuration of this configuration reference, we should include the environment variables here, which yeah, I don't think we do right now. So make that more all in one place. Good.
Yeah, that really covers my concern. I was worried that since we plan to deploy with Kubernetes, that I might end up having to recompile and rebuild container images, which I don't want to do. So this is much better. And I don't know if you see it in the document. One of the guys on my team, he actually added an extension to that question. And this is actually, you and I have actually talked a little bit about this on Slack, and we're going to talk about it again more. And we're doing two things in parallel. One is the custom plugins, again, so we have control of our own destiny with our project, but we also intend to push this upstream and an additional OAuth 2 provider effectively. That's what that's about.
Yeah, I mean, I think adding that extensibility, I mean, I'd have to, if you have like, always a great way to sort of, if you have, you can always open like a draft PR is a great way to, ask some of those questions. But the thing I would say is that, making it so that's perhaps optional or pluggable via some like simple configuration or something along those lines makes a lot of sense. And I think that what we talked about before was adding an additional like the resolver process or whatnot was kind of what was there. And if rather than having to have like a whole other one, if there's a way to make that configurable just with a different resolver, and then having that built in would be a great contribution. And once again, a great way to kind of have that, whether that's in the form of like a a draft PR or, you know, a gist with code or something, it's a great way to kind of get those conversations started. And we can get some of our other team and contributors who are on the OS side that can give really concrete feedback there. So
Cool. Yeah, I think it really just boils down to we know what we need on our end, and we want to make sure it fits in with the project as a whole, as opposed to just trying to shove through something that works for us.
Yeah, no, understood. Cool. Great question. Anything else there for right now I can answer?
Not that I can think of. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Any other questions? You know, feel free to either via the chat, or I think you can also raise your hand, or the Q&A. Zoom gives us lots of tools to ask questions. Any other questions today?
I think you have a hand raised.
Oh, there it is. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, more authentication stuff.
Sure.
So I was looking to, because I'm extending everywhere because I use custom authentication. Is the official .NET package the one Pulsar .NET client or something along those lines? I noticed it's not in the main repository is sort of how I would say it, but there seems to be a .NET repository. Is that the correct location for that for the C# implementation?
Yes. So we're actually, and that's something we're working on more broadly, is to move most of the clients out from, you know, kind of the monolithic repo into smaller repos. So the Pulsar, as well as just for context, there's the Pulsar Client Go, Pulsar Client Node, as well as the Pulsar Client Ruby that's being worked on, and those are all in their own sort of repos. So if they're underneath the Apache one, and as well, there's also the the list of clients here of the official clients.
I don't know if you're showing something on your screen, but the one that's being shown is the
I forgot I forgot I switched my share. Yeah, so as I was going through here, I'll repeat that. In the Apache, under the Apache GitHub, there's the Pulsar Client Go, the Node, and the .pulsar, as well as the Ruby that's in progress. That all those that live under the Apache repo, those are the official libraries, as well as you can find them here referenced. The Ruby one's not is not had any official releases yet. So, but and the other thing I will mention though is that this C# client, the colloquially known as .pulsar, it still has some additional things that are being added in terms of like support for like partition topics. So it's relatively newer. If you're looking for you know, some of those features right now today, I'd also this Pulsar Client.net is also a pretty solid implementation, and has some broader support right now. But and we've worked with this team. You know, they've been very responsive to issues and whatnot, and we've seen it be used effectively in production. So another option if you have some needs that aren't yet met by the official .pulsar libraries.
So is it the case that this team just took it upon themselves to make the library, and then your team or your group has sort of provided like some support, but mainly they've built out this functionality, but this isn't necessarily the official .NET Apache version. Is there a reason for that? Like, did one come before the other, or they were just built separately? And
they were both built independently. And you know, for various reasons, I think the organization that's, you know, developing the company behind this library, you know, the Apache process is wonderful. It gets things in the open source, but you know, there is sort of some additional process integration there. And
Mhm.
so there was, I think, some, desire to still be able to kind of move quickly on it, that they would have some more kind of control and ownership over. Whereas the .pulsar was another effort that was started, and also like what was similar state, I think was initially contributed by one organization, and then but there's some other there's some other things of getting support for in progress issues, for example, partition producers, consumers, that is in progress. So both are the intent, I think, is to get them to both be fairly robust libraries, but some different needs and whatnot between them. So
Great. Yeah. Thank you for that. I was curious. I had come to that other .NET client, and I was confused because of the name on the repository, and I just didn't understand if it was officially supported or if it was going to be actively worked on. But sounds like that is the case. It's just not being actively worked on by like your team and
we good members of the community, but not officially related to Stream Native or the Apache projects. But once again, we really appreciate some of the community contributions and whatnot that exist. So those are all, but this is definitely a strong invitation, and we're always happy to provide additional context on any client libraries of what we do and don't know. So and this client features matrix, I think this is if you ever have questions, this is mostly we try to keep up to date. Sometimes it may fall a little bit up to date, but if there's ever any questions about what is supported, this is a great resource for that, and for the official client libraries. And I think the organization behind this one has done a pretty good job trying to give some sense of the feature list of what's supported there.
Great. Yeah. Where is this link that you just clicked? This one? Where does this live in the document?
It is linked underneath the feature matrix from the main website, and then that links to, this used to be here, but it was harder to maintain. So we now have it as this Google Doc, which this is public Google Doc that gives you an idea of all those different things. So
great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions that I can answer for anybody? All right. Sorry, I'm just going through to make sure. So one of the things that I think, once again, yeah, go ahead, Alex. Sorry, Josh. I'm still doing it.
It's fine. It says Alex. I understand. So I've ran into another issue, and I haven't gone back to it because I've been customizing client code. Where when I upgraded from, I want to say it was 2.6.3 to 2.7.0 to 2. No, I'm sorry. It was 2.6.3 to 2.7.0 for the for all of my components. My bookies just started crashing, and so this was a cluster that already existed. I tried to do an in-place update with the image, and it was the only component that couldn't handle it. I didn't get any good error logs out of it. It seemed to just keep crashing, and I couldn't explain it. Have you in your like implementations noticed that on existing clusters? I don't see it as an issue when I build a fresh cluster with that image version or even 2.7.1. But I did see it when I tried to update an existing cluster.
No. I'm not aware of any outstanding issues for sorry, I'm going to try and look here at what the bookkeeper version would be, but there shouldn't be any so between like 270 and 271, was going to check real quick if we made any like additional updates to bookkeeper. I'm not aware of anything that would have changed there. Sorry, I'm struggling.
It's okay. If I was looking for a bookkeeper code, where would that be?
So most of those issues for bookkeeper that related, so just for context,
okay.
So there's the bookkeeper repo. If you see like issues related to bookkeeper, it's not a bad idea to check, the bookkeeper repo. But oftentimes, since we sort of, provide a bookkeeper distribution within Pulsar, there also will be issues in the Pulsar. So that's just one of those things that, but I'm not aware of any crashes that would be consistent, like could happen consistently like that on an upgrade. You might look through here, see if any of those are relevant. But yeah, the other place, obviously Pulsar in its issues will have, like I said, I'm not aware of any issues with 270. Certainly,
Okay.
I'd be happy to take some more logs and whatnot, but just for like context, because it's always a thing of like tying things together. What I wanted to point out was that if you've ever have questions about like, okay, what are some of these dependencies at, so I can trace, the POMs for every version will have the bookkeeper version. So the main POM and I can make this a bit bigger so people can see this, but the main POM is going to tell you your bookkeeper version just right there. It's always pretty easy to see. And then what I was going to kind of show here is that, if there's ever any questions about what's in a given release and whatnot, that each tag will then, serve as the thing. So we were on 4.12, we took a new version, but the 271 is also we don't typically take bookkeeper version upgrades in point releases. So you'll notice it's still 4.12 there. So yeah, sorry, I don't have a good answer for you of why that would be happening.
Okay.
But
I think
share the logs.
It just requires a lot more context, and I don't think it's something that could be answered in this call. But it was something I just wanted to ask if you had experienced it. Maybe it was like a simple,
not a known issue, at least as far as I'm aware.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Cool. Any other questions? Matt, I'll 1 second there. Help me with your name, Emmanuel.
Yeah. Sorry, I joined a little late. Is the question on the doc answered? I want to hear the answer to that.
Oh, was that answered?
Yeah, I joined a little bit late. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We did talk about it. So yes, you can either place those in and this is recorded if you want to go back, but so you can go to the Pulsar root the libs. This is the class path, Pulsar's class path. But the other thing, and I'll just put a note in here, is that you can also use this environment variable. And I'll if you set this environment for Pulsar extra class path,
okay,
that can be to any folder, and then place your jar, or maybe it actually would be to the actual jar. Then that will get loaded in the class path, and then once it's on the class path, it's eligible to be loaded into the broker you know, for usages and with extensions and whatnot.
Okay.
And the other thing, I was just thinking when Daniel was asking this question, one other thing that's pretty common as a way, instead of having to build entire new Docker images, you can do a technique where basically you just apply a small overlay. So you use the open source images as a start, simply add a few files, and then just, you know, republish them. But if you're running on Kubernetes, it's also possible you can do that with like a sidecar or like a you know, shared volume or something. There's multiple ways in which you can mount that in, but typically just adding a few files into your jars and then is a pretty easy way to go.
You mean like adding custom class as and they will compile as part of
So you don't need to, they don't need to be compiled as part of the main thing. Basically, you just use, maybe I can just give a quick example here. I'll just exit this and let me switch my screen share again. I would share my whole desktop, but there's a cajillion windows open. So for example, you know, you do something like this and you say, okay, from Pulsar 271, I have my jar built, you know, as an external process, and I am doing, you know, just a copy from, you know, lib my custom jar into, you know, the Pulsar lib folder. And so that's, you can just then create that Docker image. And instead of having to build, you know, a whole Pulsar distribution, you just add on a few folders, publish that Docker image, and then use that instead of having to, you know, do something more complex. Hopefully that makes sense.
yeah, this part is clear. A question related to that is, so the plugin is, I think that the intended purpose is if you have a different flow than the flow that's provided by Pulsar. But if you want to extend, like only modify few things, either instead of building an entire jar, either a way like to, for example, if I extend the existing implementation, which model do I have to provide as part of a jar? Do I have to extract the entire Pulsar client and then provide it as a jar as a plugin? If you understand.
Yeah, I understand. Typically, Pulsar is pretty modular, and so we can kind of talk a little about so, you know, most of, for example, the authentication is in this
In Pulsar client, we added that in Pulsar client.
Well, I thought you were doing a broker side implementation. Because if you're
okay, we test client side and we are trying to adapt that to the broker side. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're just trying to, if you've done the client side and then you're trying to adapt the broker side, you can link. So you already are linking against. Let me go back here where we have this. This extending doc, right? There's this. You already are linking against this authorization provider class, right? So for that you have to. You'll want to let me find the I can never remember which package we put this in, but one second. Yeah, you're right. Okay. So when you want to you know, you need to link against you already need to link against the correct interface, right? So in your class, you're going to depend on this Pulsar broker common library. And so you can see in Maven here, which I'll switch my share back over. There's this Pulsar broker common, right? So you should be linking against Pulsar Broker Common when you want to create your own implementation.
Okay.
I guess that's right, because that's going to then pull in the needed interface.
Okay.
But what I was going to mention is that give me one other second, and I will. If you want to extend that existing one, that same class, Pulsar Broker Common, well, no, it's not the same class. It's let me remember here. Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, no, it is there. So this same class also includes the authentication provider token class. So within this jar, there's also, you can extend some of the existing classes such as the provider token, etc. So you don't have to implement it entirely from scratch. You can, I will show that here. It's close enough. Here we go. So this implementation, so example, if you just have some customizations you want to do, you can extend, this isn't marked as final as anything. So you can actually extend an existing implementation rather than having to entirely implement it on your own. So for example, say you want to do a different way of validating the token. This one's actually private, but there are some ways that you can just change the validation of the token and extend it through extendability that way. Hopefully that makes sense. Sorry, it took me a little bit to describe that, but.
So once we did that, we have to create a jar, and then we have to provide the entire jar as part under the library. Would that be a duplicate?
No, so you're just linking against the jar. So all you want to do is you just want to, because this jar, all the Pulsar Broker Common here, all of that's already going to be on the broker. So you don't want to do like a, what's it called, like an Uber jar, or package up your other dependencies. You literally just want to link your code against it, and then just your few classes that you've had, that should be in the jar. Okay. And then just include that jar in the system. Okay. And then it's going to properly say, oh, you have my custom auth plugin. I'm going to go find that in your jar, and then we'll use the existing Pulsar Broker Common on the class path.
Okay.
So there's no need to, overwrite it or rebuild it. You're just adding new functionality via extendability. That answer your question there?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're getting we're getting almost out of time here. Was there any other questions? Sorry, I don't know if Josh, you had one more, or if I. Okay, I wasn't sure. Someone's hand was still raised from before, so I wasn't sure if that was new or old. All right. Well, let's see. I'm trying to think if there's enough time to talk a little bit about. I keep not having quite enough time to dig into the next topic of. We're going to talk a little bit about scaling, but probably not enough to dig into it in the last 8 minutes here. So I'll wait for another minute. Any final questions for the day? Otherwise, we'll end a bit early. All right, great. And one more note, just, if anybody, we're always trying to understand, how people are finding out about these things. And so if you can just put in the chat real quick to how you kind of found out about the office hour, whether that was through the Slack group or the Pulsar news or the Stream Native newsletter. It'd be great if you could just put that in the chat real quick before we end for the day. And otherwise, thank you all for attending, and thanks for coming and answering some questions, asking some questions. Hopefully those of you who didn't have questions learned some things as well. We'll look forward to doing this next month.